What about you personally, if I ask you, how's your journey spiritually? Because always struck me as a very principled
Uh,
character, like Murakag, do the right
uh,
thing kind.
I
I don't
hope,
know, I
but
could be wrong
yeah,
about my impression of you, but you come off as
yeah.
prinsipyo na tao, even in comparison to your other siblings or even your parents.
Yeah.
So there's that uniqueness about you, I think.
But uh,
Yeah, how's your spiritual journey? And can
I
you...
think it could be better. Yeah, but for now I'm like really dependent on God's provisions and on God. Like I know it's easy to be carried away when someone tells you your principle that it's by my own doing or like by the person's own doing, but
Could be innate personality also, how you're
but a lot of
wired.
times like I really try to remind myself nga not by my own strength, not by my own strength, because like temptations are strong, diba? And the moment you think that you're strong enough to handle temptations, that's when I think most people will fall. Kumpiyansa, diba?
Yeah, when you sound sure, then
Mm,
life has a way of humbling you. When
yeah,
you think you have it figured out, then
yeah,
something happens, then somehow you're awakened.
yeah. Like kaya ramen nila ako, I can go with these people and be okay in these places,
Okay.
those types. So for me, it has to be an intentional thing where you remind yourself that it's not by your own strength.
But do you identify as a Christian? Like, can you fully say with conviction that you believe Jesus rose from the dead some 2,000 years ago and he is God and the Bible is the truth?
Logically, yes, but like spiritually or like in the things that I could still do or be better, then I would say kuwang. Yeah, because again, going back um, to what I said earlier, there seems to be no limits on what you say when you believe in something, diba? So I think in that regard, it's hard for me to say I believe because there's so much things that I could do pa. Like I could read the Bible more, pray more, help other people more in those types of things. Like, yeah.
But you believe in a God that supernaturally intervenes. Like when you pray for something, is he actually listening and orchestrating something based on your internal struggles or sentiments?
There are times that I go a long time without thinking that na murag, like what you struggle with, diba? Na he's a personal God. So there are times I have to remind myself that he is a personal God and that it's up to us na mohangyo sa iyaha for this prayer or this type of request. Yeah. And that he is in control. So there is that wrestling also in me.
Has any verse like impacted your life with conviction? Has a verse somehow done something really positive for you in the spiritual aspect? Like when you read the Bible, does it have any transformational effect, or is it just the wisdom behind it? Then you go about with your subjective approach.
I think the Bible sa impact niya on me is more of like a lot of times logical that would translate into a certain mindset and then that would translate into actions. So like verses like what profits a man if he gains the whole world yet loses his own soul. Do not store for yourself riches on earth, those types of things. And then that verse where it says, do not conform to this world, the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So those types of things that make me remember that if I get too absorbed into the world, then that's a bad thing. It sets limits in me ba? Yeah.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Of course, there's wisdom in many of the verses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an eye opener in that sense that a lot of things the Bible says might not make sense, but make sense at the same time.
Yeah,
Like,
I would agree with that. Yeah.
mm,
The humility aspect, unconditional love, the
Yeah.
surrendering, the not being enough or not being too sure sounding with who we are, our actions. So in that regard, I would say there's profound wisdom there.
yeah. But like, I think since our times are different from before, where Christians or believers are persecuted, and it's maybe easier to tell the believers from the unbelievers before.
Yeah.
Maybe now it's more of like a preparation stage, maybe. So just gotta keep saying yes to responsibilities, yes to opportunities that pop up. But also, I think we need to seek out also God's will, and that's something I need to be more sensitive to.
Okay. Can you grasp the afterlife? What is it to you? Because what we know is, of course, our conscious experiences from the time we started having that memory. But what do you think really happens after death?
After that's kind of profound said for me. The Bible uses that concept because people now would say happiness is the goal. I need to eat this to feel happy. I need to do this, me time, those things. Happiness is the goal. Whereas the Bible teaches us that you have to bear your suffering, bear the cross. Then happiness or profound joy is to be found in Him or in the afterlife. Or if it's on earth, it's to be found in suffering. Diba? So I would think afterlife. Yeah, I would say that I believe there is an afterlife, and that even this capacity to think na nga ay afterlife is more biological also, I could say, and evolutionary. So the fact that we are able to delay gratification, that's why we're also able to build civilizations, diba? Like, there are things that animals would do. If you give them food, they would eat it. But for us, why do we hold off the gratification now for something in the future? Like, for you, you would think about your son, your son's son.
Yeah.
Like, we have that capacity to
Yeah.
think beyond, and I think that's placed in us for a reason. So the ability to be able to see even beyond life, I think it's placed in us for a reason. Yeah. So
Yeah. Still can't fully wrap my head around that. Because, of course, prior to us being born, diba, we have no recollection of anything. It's just wala, diba? Then after, what I can't really grasp. But I've been watching lately kanang mga near-death experiences. A lot of testimonies, and it's always about finding
Spiritual.
peace, finding that unconditional love na gidawat jud sila, and then they come back, then they have this newfound perspective sa life, then they treat people differently. They're not so immersed on kanang worldly things in a way.
Yeah, I think possible sad gyud kayo na. Like, I think that a good parallel to that would be how they are using psychedelic drugs for people with terminal illness or na ay mga drug issues or substance abuse issues, how their visions on that trip would impact them towards stopping the abuse or like discontinuing the use of certain drugs.
Have you had any psychedelic experiences? Or have you tried in the past, maybe in your youth?
Yeah,
in your
once.
younger years?
Once, yeah. Yeah, once.
Once.
Yeah. So
Did you really hallucinate or have these?
yeah, there were visions on that trip, but I think I would say na during that time I took it na ay murag expiry on the impacts of those visions also. So that's why I would segue back into the Bible na when you're born again, there's this profound feeling that you find peace and love in God. But then if you don't remain intentional into nurturing that relationship or talking with God or reading the Bible, then nasa expiry date on that. So it's a different thing to be born again, and then in the Bible it also talks about you have to abide in His love, and that would translate into obeying His commands. So it's not only one thing, a pill that makes you see things differently. Maybe it can not initially, but then there would have to be that intentional aspect also.
When would you say were you born again? Did you have that one moment in your life where you transformed, or is it a continuous
I would
thing,
say it's a
back and
continuous
forth,
thing.
push and pull sort of thing? Or was there that one moment where, oh, from this, then you're from here, then you're in this new, renewed journey?
Well, looking back, I don't know, it's sort of like my brain doesn't really want me to more of the logical side bitaw. So I had an experience when I was young in a youth camp, but then my brain now would just tell me that maybe nadala lang ko sa music, sa message sa pastor or something.
Emotionalism.
Yeah. So maybe kanang more of a continual wrestling or learning, I would say.
What's your take on heaven and hell, that whole concept, eternal torment and
kind of heaven and hell is also it's interesting kay we are able to understand what it is, diba?
yeah.
Like it's people I don't think realize how complex that sort of ideas are.
Yeah.
So maskin wala kay any notion of heaven and hell, you haven't seen things like it. When you say or when you tell someone, do you understand what heaven is? They would imagine the best place or the best things that can happen to someone, and then hell, the opposite of that. So I think that again goes back to murag kana gibutang na sa atong DNA to be able to understand something like that. In regards to the notion, yeah, I mean, I would say I believe also there's a heaven and a hell. Yeah.
Okay. I think what I wrestle with is kanang that whole concept of eternal torment. But of course, I think being held accountable for our actions.
But I think your view is
some
more of
ultimate justice somehow. But yeah, it's really something I wrestle with.
But for you, ang view nimo, I think, on hell is that it's something to force people into believing in, let's say, Christianity, diba? It's used as like some sort of punishment.
Some sort of threat, or like, if you don't do this, then the whole conditional aspect of it. Yeah. Pero mao na, lisod man sad if it's just all chaos, like there's no aim, then there would be, of course, anarchy and kanang gubot sa jud kayo ba if we don't really set things in order.
Yeah.
Going back to Peterson, di ba? Carrying that responsibility and leveling up, character development, which is also part of the Christian narrative na humility, transformation, and all this.
Yeah.
But it's the correlating everything. Because day to day in our lives, we get so caught up, diba, with career advancements, other things, secularism in a sense, business, or whatever field, since it's very diversified. Daghan kay ma-explore ba sa atong humanity.
Yeah, but I think consequences do happen, like going back to that heaven and hell, or like going back to what you said, na there are so many things we can focus on. Manifest ragyod ang consequence if we are
true, like raising a child, of course, if ipabaya na, of course, dili matarong in terms of iyang upbringing, iyang mindset, or even like as simple as like a car, if you just leave it alone, it's eventually gonna crumble. Di na mo andar if hindi ni mo ipa-service. So it's gonna
I mean,
decay.
I think we can localize that example of heaven and hell. Like, kana, imong going to your example nga, gipabaya na imong auto, nya, you're on the highway, nya, naguba siya, then you find yourself in hell if you don't know how to fix your car. You're stranded, you're suffering there.
Yeah.
So you don't get to choose that consequence, diba?
Yeah, so I think there's no alternative but to carry that responsibility, move forward, and take on deeper meaning.
Yeah, so it's not like if you don't take care of your car, maguba ang auto ha, and I'm using that maguba ang auto as a way to modify your behavior or change, diba? It's a consequence of what people do or don't do.
Yeah, so I think that's similar in all aspects, health, career.
Right.
It really impacts everything.
Yeah, and health, most especially nga karon, people eat whatever they want, and their basis for doing that is to be happy or to feel good, and that they mentally need it. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess wala jay alternative.
We're not free from the consequences.
Yeah. We're free in that aspect. We can do whatever, but we can't escape the consequences in all areas, I think, of life.
Yeah, so when people say, na bagay free will, na if you don't believe you're going to hell, then I mean, it's the same thing. You have free will to eat whatever you want, but you're not free from the consequences that will happen to your body.
But I guess ultimately that's what gives meaning in our lives. It's the difficult things. It's the
bearing of responsibility.
The arduous stuff. Okay, di ba mga bisyo, it's so easy to just spend money. It's easy to just womanize or to indulge into all these pleasures. But there's no gratification after, in the sense na ni-endure ka ba. Same with, of course, working out, dieting, or getting into shape.
Yeah, I think movies, a lot of movies that we can relate with sums up that type of motif. Like, I think the hero motif, that's why Jordan Peterson as nigikan nga in the movies we watch, a lot of times there's a character na young siya, naive, failure after failure after failure, but then if he shows resilience through that failure, willing to learn, willing to put himself in danger, and then he ends up becoming the hero, you know. And I think that is sort of like a good analogy to how we're supposed to live life. Like, bahala na sige tag fail, as long as we're willing to learn, we're falling forward, and we are willing to put ourselves in places where we grow.
Yeah, as long as na leveling up, no.
And the opposite of that, if again going back to movies, the opposite of that, okay, there are past heroes that fail and then they end up going to the bar or drinking themselves.
Those movies really interest me also.
Yeah, like I think Thor sa Marvel, nadako na kayang tiyan because he thought himself as a failure.
Yeah, and same actually, like, of course, the classic movie, The Godfather, diba? That central character, Michael Corleone, is considered a tragic hero. Okay, diba? Mafia world, he was the outsider. He was like a soldier. His dad didn't want him involved sa mafia business. But murag inevitable na siya ra joy capable. Kay siya ra may kamao, siya bright, siya cunning. So murag siya na he lost his humanity there because he got so into that bearing responsibility. Pero sa dili mao sa mafia underworld.
I think the goal is also important.
Yeah. And similar with like series Breaking Bad, if you're familiar. Diba? Walter White, like this hin chemistry teacher. Then he becomes this drug kanang sige na siya kuta o crystal meth na.
That's a good example also like Walter White. Like, you would say hin buutan siya, but his character wasn't really that.
Yeah. Pero ni level up yung character, pero he became, di ba, mas evil na hakog. And then his ego was so inflated na.
Yeah, so I think with children, mausad na siya nga, there are parents I think would keep their child in four-dimensional boxes or in their house and say that this is so the child will be good. But is the child really good just because there's an absence of things that he's not doing wrong? Mark si Walter White ba, he didn't have any access to doing those types of things. But when he was provided access, that's when we see nga dili de siya what we thought he was before.
Yeah, hin pero kuan
Yeah.
kay to ambitious. But his kuan man to, diba? It was because of his cancer that really
Oh yeah.
made him have the guts to really push for it.
Yeah,
And
but
in the guys na para sa pamilya ang kwarta. Pero through illegal means.
but I think it was in him na sad, diba? Like there are people that with cancer they would just say I'm about to die, so they're not
so
gonna
he
do
had
anything.
that. So daghag ironies pod ba this.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so we never know if people are really good because they stop themselves from doing something that they're capable of doing, or they're good because dili sila kamao, or they're just really ignorant and naive.
Yeah. I think when people say buutan ang tao, I think it's a very murag dili precise na description ba, just because someone's hin
Yeah.
buutan.
Yeah.
Murag it's deeper than that. Bro, anyway, for you, what gives your life purpose and meaning personally?
Personally, like going back, saying yes to responsibilities. So currently, like I think even cooking meals for Richie, or
Are your hands on with the cooking?
yeah, karon wala pa may helper. So I think there was a time I was cooking and I realized that if I don't do this, then I'm doing this so that we can eat. That sort of like, I know it's something small, but it's, to me, I can see myself as doing something useful. Yeah.
Would you say that's therapeutic for you, cooking? And you mentioned earlier you were supposed to do some cleaning, some chores.
Yeah,
household.
I think there are these things are good for the soul. Na murag, you don't think you're above doing these types of small chores. Yeah, and I think that it's good. It's good for the mind and the body. Yeah, because I also think of these things as exercise when said good. Yeah, so keep your body moving. Yeah.